Welcome to the Restore Justice podcast, where we're always looking to explore the idea of doing justice God's way and the gospel way. And a lot of this thinking comes out of a book that Bruce Strom, who's with us, wrote called Gospel Justice. Bruce, you're here with our good friend, Steve Keist. So if you don't mind, Bruce, kick us off by just introducing Steve to our friends and then set this episode up for us. My understanding is over the next few sessions, we're going to be continuing to look at the story of the Good Samaritan from different angles, right? From the different participants in the story. Today, we're going to be looking at the injured man. Yeah, so let's set that up for us and introduce us to Steve.
Yeah, Jose. Steve and I have been blessed to serve the injured man on Jericho's Road for many years through Christian Legal Aid. So Steve started an organization 20 some years ago in Arizona. I'm in Illinois. Also started, Administer Justice. And we have been blessed to use the law degrees. Steve is a lawyer, a very successful lawyer, senior partner of a firm that he started and has been blessed to add other lawyers too. He's been a judge pro tem in the court system in Arizona. He's a pilot to know the more fun things and a good friend. But he understands the poor that we're going to talk about today, the injured man, because he's been blessed to sit beside many of them just as I have. And so I want our readers, because sometimes we don't understand the road to poverty in America, what brings us there, and why is there even a problem? Why is justice such a prevalent problem for a country that from an earliest age we learned to say the Pledge of Allegiance with liberty and justice for all?
For all.
To be in a country where that is just not true, because law is a monopoly, it's very expensive. The reality is the average American earns $56,000, family of four. That person, that average American, cannot afford the high cost of legal services.
Yeah.
And so when we make justice only available for those who can afford it, we really lack in our country's pledge. Then when we root justice in the heart of God and character of God in the foundation of his throne, which is where it's even more important and prevalent, we miss an opportunity to be people of justice as God desires. That's all going to circle around one of the least of these, which is that injured man, I think, on the road to Jericho.
And so we're going to talk today about that injured man and see this whole story from that perspective. Steve, one of the many things you have in common with Bruce is you're a practicing lawyer, right? And law has been your lane for a long time. What is it, I think, about being a lawyer that drew you to administer justice in the first place? And this whole idea of legal aid and Christian legal aid, like what kind of drew your heart to it? When? How did that happen? And then let's start getting your insight on this injured man and when you started to recognize the injured man along the path, while lawyers typically don't.
Okay. Well, like Bruce, I started out in private practice and for a while was a solo and then in small firms back in the Midwest. And then I came to Phoenix 30 plus years ago and had the same practice here. And you find out early on in private practice that there are a lot of people that need your help but don't have any money, or they have very little. Some of them are working, but they're working, we call working poor. They have enough money to just get by every month. And unfortunately, we're seeing that to a greater extent today, I think, than when I started 40 some years ago. And so you want to help those people. And I wasn't a Christian when I first graduated from law school, but I became a Christian early on in my legal career. And I was moved by the fact that there were people that I knew I could help, but they couldn't pay me. And my wife used to kid me that I would come home and say, well, honey, I helped another person today, but it's not going to help put bread on our table.
Yeah.
But I did anyway.
Yeah.
And I was just moved to do that. And then, of course, Bruce did, we found out that there was a way to formally do that and do it from a biblical perspective, and help people as part of Christian legal aid. But those people are all around us. People that are hurting, they're fearful, they have legal issues, and they just don't know how to address those. And so they don't. And unfortunately, many times, the advice they need is not that difficult to give from a lawyer's perspective. but it can make a huge difference in their life.
And that's interesting. In the parable, Bruce, it's a physically injured man, right? But it's a parable, so it's a picture. And sometimes you guys deal with physically injured persons, but sometimes they're emotionally injured, sometimes they're financially injured. Predominantly, what are some of the major injuries you end up seeing when running gospel justice centers? What's the kind of stuff you're dealing with?
Sure, Joe, and I agree. Jesus could have told the story differently, but honestly, he was clear in making the injured man one of them, kind of to identify with. And we'll talk about that a little bit here in a minute, but how Jesus wanted his audience to actually identify with that injured man. And then just recognizing that that person could have just been robbed. But to your point, it was both a financial hardship. He was robbed of his money and his clothes.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
He's robbed of dignity. He's literally left naked, bleeding out on the road, and he's violent, right? And he suffers violence. So that's why I say that clearly is about injustice. And those injustices still are perpetrated upon people today. There are still financial abuses. So to answer your question, we will see senior citizens get taken advantage of through financial scams. We'll see exorbitant interest rates from loan sharks. Sometimes we see that, or bad contracts people just didn't understand in navigating. So sometimes we will see that financial aspect. Maybe somebody's not even being paid wages, so it literally is what they call wage theft that you're taking, that you've just robbed the person of. Those are kinds of issues that sometimes come up. Sometimes it is injuries. We will have people that will walk in that were injured on the job physically, or we have, sadly, the worst ones that we do see are those that were violated. They were sexually abused or domestic violence. Those kinds of issues are pretty prevalent. And then on the emotional side, that's what we see most often. And emotionally, just like that injured man who saw good people look at him and walk by, those who cannot afford lawyers feel completely looked over by the system, completely shut up, like everybody's just walking by. They don't understand it. They don't understand how to get answers. They don't understand why nobody will give them answers or listen, and it becomes so hard. And so we see that kind of pain in all of the areas, family being most prevalent, but in all kinds of other government benefit issues, from vets to Social Security to other kinds of everyday kitchen table issues that people.
So yeah, Steve, see if this resonates with you, because I'm assuming being in Phoenix is a high rental town, right? A lot of rentals, landlord tenant stuff, right? So this is crazy, guys. So I'm in Miami. We just moved from one apartment to another, in a condo building, and it's a furnished apartment. We moved some furniture around. We moved some pictures off the wall to put up some of our pictures. The property manager happened to pop in to fix the AC and freaked out. The landlord's going to be really upset. This picture was really important to them. We thought nothing of it. But then like 2 days later, a letter shows up. You could tell it's drafted by the lawyer because it's all legalese, but forwarded by the property manager. And I read it and I'm like, oh my goodness, we're in trouble. Oh, you violated this. You're in breach of the contract. We could file against this. We could send a letter to the police station saying that these items are missing. I'm reading it going, okay, I know a few lawyers. I know what to do, right? So the response, I call my lawyer. His response was, yeah, just send them an email back saying, hey, this is above me. I'm introducing you to my lawyer. And guys, that's all it took.
Yeah.
As soon as they saw that I had a lawyer and it was a high-powered attorney, because you guys lawyers look each other up, never heard from him again. And then today the property manager is super nice to my wife. Hey, can I come by and drop some stuff off for you? The issue went away because I had the ability to engage a lawyer in minutes. But how often have you, Steve, dealt with that injured person on the side of the street who couldn't make that phone call, didn't have that access, and the abuse continued way past what I dealt with?
Yeah, so that's a perfect example, Joe. If you were a blue-collar worker or a single mom with a couple of kids in an apartment, which is what we see all the time today with the breakdown of the family, our prototypical client, if you will, is a single mom with a couple of kids who's trying to make it and probably not getting child support from the husband or the ex-husband or the father. And they get a letter like that and they don't know what to do.
Yeah.
And the landlords will take advantage of them if they can. They'll up their rent, they'll make a move, or they'll, make some of the demands, and they don't know that they have rights. And so that's how a lot of these people end up on the street. That's why we have such a homeless problem. In the homeless population, you've always got a certain number of people that have mental health issues. You got a certain number of people that have substance abuse issues. But today's world, you've got the rest of them who are people who just lost their apartment or their house.
Wow.
And now they're on the street. If they don't have family to take them in, they're helpless. I mean, they're just out there trying to deal with life without a place to live. So it's tough.
And Bruce, gospel justice, right, God's way of restorative justice basically says, if you have the ability to help and you see this in your neighborhood, in your town, if you hear of this, you must engage, right? So whether you go to a church and you can volunteer and join one of these gospel justice teams, or you're a lawyer with skill like you guys, you must engage. That's the message I got. When I read your book, I was like, okay, I'm an entrepreneur. I don't know a thing about the law. I just know some cool lawyers, but I must engage in the way I need to engage, or I'm going to give a really bad account, right? So I think as we kind of close out this segment, maybe this is a chance for you to talk to the lawyers out there, to talk to people who have this heart for justice, who may just be willing to volunteer at their church with a gospel justice center, or an entrepreneur like me who says, look, I can't do much, but maybe I can help fund one of these starting up. What would your call be based on this perspective that you and Steve have given us of the injured person in every one of our neighborhoods?
Yeah, Joe, that's the profound truth, that 1 in 3 Americans simply cannot afford an attorney, and they are in your neighborhood. There are single moms in your neighborhood, as Steve described, that are bleeding out on Jericho's Road. I mean, they're confused. They're full of fear. I mean, think of a poor mom who's just afraid, how am I going to feed my child, or how am I going to take care of them? I don't know if anybody who's a parent listening, I hope, can feel the fear that our neighbors do and the weight that they do. And there's so many of them. And yet God has strategically placed the church in communities all across America. He strategically positioned the church on the front lines, wherever your church is. He's strategically given to the church people and a call to do justice, to literally, out of Micah 6:8, what does the Lord require of you but to do justice, love kindness, walk humbly with God. So there are people in your church who care about justice. Maybe they're not lawyers, and maybe you have some lawyers. So you have the special skill and you have people who care. Bring them together. And I love, Steve does this in his church, right? And I love the different people that he's got involved there. Across age ranges, across different people, and they come together one Saturday morning a month. So it's not a massive time commitment, but it's a critically important time commitment to serve vulnerable neighbors. People from the neighborhood come into that church on Saturday morning that would never have stepped foot maybe on Sunday, but they get this wonderful encounter of a loving team, and it turns their world upside down, just like the Samaritan did in Jesus' story, stopping to help that injured man. Turns people's world upside down when the church and lawyers, both of them not thought of well in society, are demonstrating that they truly love their neighbor, and they're providing legal help, and they're also really seeking to meet their other needs, social and most of all spiritual, as they pray and as they enter into conversations about the gospel and God's love for them. So, I don't think Jesus didn't really make it an option. Jesus did not let that priest and the Levite off the hook. He said, hey, they saw the opportunity and they missed it. And the Samaritan is the one that stopped. And he clearly was saying, when he said, go and do likewise, he was saying, you got to stop. You got to see the need. You got to meet the need. That's what it will mean to be a good Samaritan that reflects the great Samaritan who did that for us.
Stephen, kind of closing, any thoughts you have to share with lawyers and potential volunteers, people listening who have maybe this heart for justice? They can, even as they're listening to you guys, they're like, I feel that way. I feel kind of this prompt. What would you encourage them to do? Any closing thoughts for them as we wind down this episode?
Well, certainly for Christian lawyers, the Bible's really clear. God is huge, if you will, on justice. And the Bible's full of references to justice and injustice. But just for lawyers in general, I would say all of us go to law school. Most people go, they want to help people.
Mm-hmm.
They may not have a job where they can do that. I mean, they may be working in a corporate world, they may be working for an insurance company, who knows? But just about every lawyer I've talked to says, yeah, I really would love to be able to know that I'm just helping people, and that there's an opportunity to do that. And as Bruce said, it's an easy lift. It's a couple hours once a month is what we usually ask for volunteers. And it can make a huge difference in the lives of people. And it's the most rewarding thing a lawyer can do. And most of my volunteers have all said that. This is the most rewarding thing I do in my legal career, is give advice to people that can't afford to pay.
Yeah, so we invite more people to join the journey, join this movement to get 1,000 gospel justice centers launched around the country. Be part of it in some way and come meet these guys. They're a fun bunch to hang out with. I certainly enjoy them. So thank you, gentlemen. Thank you for being part of this episode, and we'll see you all next time.